Share Shootout brought to you by Lion of Africa Insurance, insuring South Africa's future.
Welcome to this week's edition of your Stock Picking Battle Royal. I'm Bruce Whitfield. You're watching CNBC Africa, first in business worldwide. It's Tuesday, and that means for the next 30 minutes you're watching Share Shootout, which also means you're in for some stern stock picking arguments. This is the show where no stock pick goes unchallenged and no response to any stock is stock standard. So tonight we've got defending champion from last week, Mike Haworth from Applied Capital Insights, and a brave challenger, none other than the Rhodes University purple wearing Sasha Naryshkine from Vestact. Our guests have pre-picked 3 shares, neither knows what the other holds, but at some point in proceedings they must accept at least one of their competitors' picks. The longer they leave it, the more likely they are to have to accept something they don't like. They've got 30 seconds each to argue their stock pick. We then interrogate their choice, we humiliate them, we stamp on their egos, and then it either gets shot down or accepted. That's how the Share Shootout is won on what is arguably the most vicious stock picking show on TV. Let's let the Share Shootout begin, and because you are the defending champion, Mike, I'm going to make you go first with your first pick this evening, which he's going to find very hard to shoot down. BHP Billiton, your 30 seconds start now.
BHP's got a very diverse upstream mining portfolio. It's doing a lot of tidying up at the moment. It's slowed a whole lot of projects down because of what's happening in the international metals commodity prices. It's trying to ride the shale gas revolution in the States. That's a really positive move. They've put McKenzie in as new CEO. He comes from a petroleum background. That's going to do well for them. They haven't got things like platinum. They haven't got South African exposure of any consequence.
30 seconds are up. Okay, he doesn't have any exposure of any consequence left either. 30 seconds are up. You can't shoot this one down because you really, really like it.
Yeah, it's one of our biggest holding in our client portfolios. So without knowing the other 2, I'm going to give this one the thumbs up.
Okay, well, you can't do it so easy. Otherwise, we end up having our 6 stocks and we run out of time. BHP Billiton, the exposure to petroleum is interesting. They've always had oil exposure, but this is a new focus. In the same way as David Constable at Sasol is going into the United States, going to Lake Charles, thank you very much, and looking for shale gas there. These guys are going on that same kind of revolution, the same bandwagon.
Yeah, so if you've seen kind of in the Midwest, but that actually extends all the way from North Dakota down into Texas, the shale gas revolution has reduced emissions controls in the US by something like 40%. It's also increased or decreased their reliance on oil imports, which is also a net positive for the US trade balance. So I can see why everyone thinks it's added an enormous amount of jobs. I think jobs in the oil and gas sector are at like a 25-year high.
But let's focus on BHP Billiton. Where is BHP Billiton's shale gas exploration focused on?
Well, it's down in that Texas region.
They're in Texas.
Mainly, and then kind of all the way through to Louisiana. So they've got most of their focus is in the south.
And one of the great ironies, of course, of the Marius Klopper's era at BHP Billiton was that lack of exposure to South Africa. Perhaps it needed a South African to see the shortcomings of the South African resources sector for BHP Billiton to keep an arm's length there.
Yeah, Bruce, and I think one of the real strengths, I mean, they're really getting good volume growth out of all their Australian operations. A lot of investment still continuing. They've got about 19 brownfields projects, so they're much lower, that are still on the go. They've I think, halted about 68. So, what I like about the company as well, there's a lot of strategic adaptation taking place. It's become very clear that they can't go for the big acquisitions anymore. They're continually starting to get blocked. So this is where this shale gas story is a very interesting one. They're tidying up a lot of their sort of sundry kind of assets, bits and pieces all over the place. For example, they're tidying up their gas interests in Pakistan and Algeria and these kind of places. So that will help bring down the gearing somewhat, because I think the gearing's up at about 40%. Is it 30%? So, and what you might lose out a little bit from an operational point of view, you're going to get back from a little bit of financial engineering.
What about commodity prices, though? You talk about a bit of financial engineering, but that will only take you so far. Commodity prices worldwide under a huge amount of pressure.
They are, and I think that what you've got to do if you want to play in the space. I personally don't believe we're in for a big V. I think we're going to really lumber and lurk for a good couple of years. So you want to be in one of your lowest cost producers you can find with the most diverse portfolio.
And on a multiple of under 12, this is an historical multiple of under 12, it's a sitter. You're not going to shoot it down. You're accepting it with two big thumbs up.
That's right.
Okay, that's the easiest sell you've ever had,
Absolutely.
Mike. I think you did your research on your competitor. Well,
I got my co-salesman.
exactly. Oh dear, this is going to be an interesting close. Let's have a look at your 30 seconds starting now on Sasol, Sasha.
David Constable is an engineer who's well au fait with these gas projects in North America, and the next big push is in Louisiana, Lake Charles, without a doubt. Trades on a very undemanding multiple and a yield close to 5%. I think Lake Charles is a game changer. It will get a re-rating in the next half a decade to a decade. It's a takeout target for sure at less than 10% of the ExxonMobil market cap. I think once they're in North America and established and producing, they'll be as quality as you can get.
See,
I thought I had to stop right there.
You did have to, but I just wanted to see what you would do if you just had the extra 3 seconds. Now, Mike, based on the fact that this is on exactly the same theme that you were exploring with BHP Billiton, and the fact that you're in cahoots with one another tonight,
Not at all.
you can't shoot Sasol down, can you? Or can you?
I was an analyst for 15, 16
You
years.
can do
at
anything.
Sasol. Now the company's changed a lot since the days that I was looking at it before in the 90s. And I think that one of the big issues I have, particularly with going into the States, is it looks to me like the gas to liquids project is probably not, it's borderline viable. The ethane project looks to me to be a real winner. That could be pretty good. So what Sasol's about to do is actually put 50% of its asset base outside the country. So, for the South Africa, it's a major problem because you're now taking investment, jobs, trade, you name it, taxes, everything out of the country.
Okay, but we're not talking about the moral suasion here and whether Sasol is being a good public civil servant. We're
Thanks
talking
for
about
putting me
whether or
back
not
on course.
this is a good investment.
It has been a very good investment. I think the oil price is coming under pressure for exactly the reasons we're talking about. I think there's a lot more supply coming on from the States, and in a world economy that's not really sparking, it's not lifting like everyone thought it was going to. I think we've got some issues. I think that oil price is drifting down, and the other big issue I have is what's happening with the yen and what the Japanese are doing, and potentially Sasol is a fantastic rand hedge. So if the rand starts to strengthen because of capital flows coming from Japan, that's going to be very problematic.
All right, but now you look at this, and the argument that Mike makes is a strong argument. It is a high-risk David Constable, red or black. Let's take 50% of the assets, put them into the United States, and let's run on this particular theme, which he says is marginal for Sasol.
If you don't do that, you're not going to get the re-rating that your shareholders have been looking for. The Qatar expansion plan, that was supposed to do that. Now, but if you're a North American...
Historically, Sasol has gone and done lots of projects, lots of big promise in lots of different parts of the world, and then sort of comes back with its tail between its legs.
I wouldn't say... I think you're referring specifically to the Chinese and Indian coal projects that never went ahead. I think we're living in a world where coal is a lot dirtier. And BHP Billiton, by their own admission, have said that they see less demand for coal in the coming years as we switch to better projects in the natural gas environment, and that ties in nicely with the CO2 emissions being much, much lower.
But aren't there people who are better at natural gas than Sasol?
No one at this sort of size and scale is better than Sasol at what they do.
But natural gas is not what they do.
Yeah, but remember in Qatar, Shell embarked on a massive project, and you know who beat them at their own game? It was Sasol. Okay. So, granted that...
It's a valiant effort, but I don't think your sales technique has got a taker.
Well, he's a little bit older than me.
and he's been around, and he remembers the heyday.
That was gracious.
You're shooting him down.
I am shooting
and
him
not
down.
Because he's ageist, because Sasol's a really rubbish idea, in your opinion.
No, listen, I've always liked the company. I'm not convinced about that US operation.
It's a big bet.
It's also drawn a lot of its resources, scattered them all over the place with these projects, coming from a skill-short country. So that's problematic. And I have an issue about the oil price, which is Sasol can't control, and I also have an issue about the rand.
Okay, so it's more oil price, it's more currency than company specific, although
absolutely,
this is a big bet, which if it goes well, Sasol goes to $600. If it goes badly, this
A long-term bet, Bruce.
Yeah.
It's not if we're talking about something in the short term, this is, I think the decision's only going to be made at the end of the year or something.
Yeah, you've had your time. You're no longer
Thank
allowed
you,
to interject.
Brett,
You're shooting him down.
I'm shooting him down.
Bang, you're gone. Okay, right. Your next one then, Mike Haworth, is Omnia Holdings, a 10 billion rand market cap producer of fertilizers and also of explosives. Your 30 seconds on Omnia. Start now.
Yeah, an industrial chemical business. It's got mining, it's got fertilizer, it's got industrial chemicals. Just put in a big nitric acid plant. Going to bring down its cost dramatically, so margin's going to widen. They're pushing strongly out into West Africa and Central Africa on the mining side, so catching that African mining story. And I think food security is a growing issue in this country, so that their fertilizer business, and particularly their high level of service in the fertilizer business, is going to stand them in good stead. Industrial chemicals, they're also trying to push out into this expansion of Africa.
Zip, there we go.
It's not fair, you got an extra 5 seconds.
Sure, you get a slap on the head. You had one last time you came on the show, you'll get another one now. Omnia Holdings, do you like it?
I do, unfortunately.
Ooh.
But I'm going to have to, for purposes of the game, find reasons not to like them. And
Okay.
as they say in the classic...
It's okay though. You are allowed to like more than one stock. It just means that you lose the game.
Yeah, but who wants to lose the game? You know, what a crusher to one's ego. If
But
one has one on the show.
you're way ahead on losing the game so far. So, why do you like Omnia Holdings?
Okay, why I like Omnia, for all the reasons that Mike said. You know, I mean, I think specifically the only place that maybe they'll struggle is on the mining side locally here with explosives. But what we've seen in an African context is, you know, you hear stories of Chinese growing rice in Malawi and then exporting it through Mozambique. You know, I mean, you hear those stories on the ground. So who's going to benefit? You know, definitely Omnia's well equipped to benefit inside of that space.
But if I'm a Chinese rice grower in Malawi...
Are you going to get your fertilizer from China? Yeah, no, good point. Good valid point. But I think early stages you'll look for people who are producing at scale on the continent before making up your mind on cost specifically. But I think they would be able to compete.
Okay, you think they'll be able to compete. So that's why you like it. Tell me why you're going to valiantly make an attempt to shoot it down.
Because I think the mining environment in a South African context is definitely under pressure. You know, you've seen production from the majors in the precious metals space really come tumbling down. You know, this last quarter for Harmony, they're going to produce somewhere in the region of 250,000 ounces. 9 years ago was 750,000 ounces. So you've got to bet that, you know, the local suppliers are under a bit of pressure because their major customers are struggling.
But they've got other customers. They've got customers in the iron ore space, no doubt. I mean,
they do
blow stuff up in the iron ore industry, don't you?
No, they do. And I also think in an agricultural perspective, offline, we were talking about the woes of the agriculture sector in Zimbabwe. You know, I mean, we're seeing similar things in a South African context.
You're grabbing at straws, aren't you?
I'm not.
You're like a drowning man.
I speak to my farmer clients, they're really under pressure. They're not expanding their businesses, which obviously means they're...
Okay, I grew up on a farm.
Yes.
And a bad year on the farm is when there's not a new Mercedes-Benz every year. Farmers always struggle. And even if they're not struggling, they tell you they're struggling. You should know this by now. He can't shoot it down, can he, Mike?
I think from a mining point of view, Sasha's point about mining in general, I think the real travails are in the deep level mining side. Most of this is open cast. So the problem that you might have is that you might have guys go and hijack the pit and a couple of vehicles for a week or two.
We saw
or you have some rain. Those are the kind of problems you're going to have. But generally speaking, you've got an altogether different level of operator anyway. Firstly, and from an agricultural point of view, you've got huge service diversity in terms of liquid fertilizer or granulated, depending on what you require. And they've got all the agri services, so they will come onto your farm and actually look at your soils and tell you exactly what you need.
I buy your argument. I was
just reinforcing.
But he doesn't, because he's playing a game, a dangerous political game in which he's going to shoot you down just because he is desperately trying to win because he doesn't like losing. You're shooting him down. I veto your shooting down. I think you're wrong.
Veto.
I think I veto you shooting down. It's the first time I've ever done that, and I think it makes me very powerful. Your 30 seconds on City Lodge.
Okay,
Start now.
City Lodge has got a re-rating relative to where its share price was for a few years. There's a nice property underpin there, and if you just rate that relative to the property sector, It's roughly about 4.5 billion relative to a market cap of 5.2. Clifford Ross been around forever. I think the Aberdeen Asset Management buying 15% of the company is a stamp of approval if ever you needed one, and there's early stage expansion to the rest of the continent. Very smart guys and very good at picking sites specifically.
Okay, your 30 seconds are up. I just need, this is not extra time, this is interrogation. The Aberdeen Asset Management acquisition of 15% of City Lodge. Why does that tantalize your taste buds?
Because it just tells me to have someone of that sort of size and scale. It's the same as having, BlackRock investing, 4% in BHP Billiton. To have a stamp of approval from someone that size and scale definitely tells me that someone's done their homework properly here.
Okay, but City Lodge, it's been a bit of a laggard. They went on this massive, mad hotel building spree along with everybody else. 2007, 2008,
Playing
2009. We then had soccer. Hotels were full for 2 weeks, and since then, occupancies have been at at sort of 75% of where they were at their peak, and which is what, it's about 60%.
61%.
Occupancy rate.
Coming back now.
Coming back slowly, but it shows they misread the cycle. It worries me a little bit. How about you, Mike?
But if you look at what goes on in this country, we have an enormous number of conferences. There's a lot of powwows going on all over the place. Not a lot
Does
of
anybody
action,
who
but
goes
there's
to
a
a
lot of
conference
talking
really
going on.
want to stay in a City Lodge, I wonder?
Well, I think what happens is that, there's a lot of hangers-on, press, for example, etc.
Maybe the press would never stay in a City Lodge.
Come on, it's like Mr. Price and McDonald's.
The point is, you try and you get onto the flights.
Yeah.
There's lots of, there's not much room on the flights. The hotels, generally speaking, are pretty full. We've got lots and lots of sort of conferencing type of activity on the go, and they've got the installed base now. So from that perspective, I like it. What I don't like is that I think it's expensive. It's had
very
a hell of a
expensive.
good run, and it's expensive. That's the only thing I don't like about
Defend
City
the
Lodge.
price.
Yeah, the property underpin, I think, does defend the price to some
Yeah, so
extent.
earnings are rubbish, but there's the property underpin.
Earnings aren't rubbish, and remember they're a great dividend payer too, and traditionally always have been.
Okay.
And Endeley, he hasn't sold his stake; he's still hanging on to his 10-odd%. The founder of the business is happily. I think he lives in Somerset West.
He does live in Somerset West, absolutely. But here's City Lodge. Okay, you talk about Clifford Ross having been around for ages. Who's Clifford Ross's natural successor?
Yeah, there's always those questions within any business, Bruce, and then suddenly someone emerges, you say, oh, well, that oak's been there 10, 15 years. I can't identify anyone specifically,
Isn't
but
that
the fact that Hans Endeley was able to be in the business for that length of time tells me, there's probably legs in Clifford Ross quite a long way. And I want to defend that through the cycle thing, because traditionally they always build when they see a softening in the cycle so they can get cheaper prices for their hotels.
Okay, well, that's a strong argument to be made. Mike, do you accept it or do you shoot it down?
Well, I've already shot one, so I can't shoot another, which is a bit
Well,
unfortunate.
actually, I look at his third pick, and you might want to play this one carefully.
Well, I've already shot one. I've got no more bullets, have I?
No, you've shot one. You can shoot down
I can
two.
shoot
Two
down
bullets.
two.
But you have to then accept the third.
If you shoot.
Well, have a bit of
One of
tension.
the other issues I have, and I buy what Sasha says about the property portfolio, but one's got to then make a big assumption about what the yield curve is going to look like and what it's going to do over the next period in terms of valuation. Because obviously, as the yield curve comes down, the discount rates on those properties look better and better, and the valuations get pushed up. Now,
I need to rush you.
It's too expensive.
It's too expensive. You're shooting it down. Oh, a high-stakes game being played this evening, Sasha. You've been shot down twice in a row. Let's take a short break, but before we do, Sasol's picks of Sasol. I keep doing this because you like Sasol a lot, don't you, Sasha? Sasha, the Sasol picker. Sasol is shot down in flames, mostly because there's too much risk being taken, because the oil price is not sufficiently high, and because the rand could strengthen. Those are his reasons, not mine.
$10
Don't
a barrel in
shoot
1998.
the messenger. And then City Lodge has been shot down as well. 5 billion rand company, too expensive, says Mike Haworth. Mike Haworth, however, has got the big thumbs up, double thumbs up, in fact, from Sasha for BHP Billiton. Omnia Holdings, however, gets a tentative thumbs down only because Sasha wants to be difficult, and on that he was overruled. So far, Mike Haworth has got BHP Billiton thumbs up, and Omnia Holdings a default thumbs up because Sasha is playing a political game and not a strategic one. This is a vicious game. We'll be back with this in a moment. See you on the other side.